incredibly sensitive to the source material in a way that just blew my mind. But there have been times when I just go, no, shut up. And then I'm always surprised. I go back and I'm like, no, you know what, that's right. That was a good take. I'm glad I shut my mouth, because had they done what I suggested, it wouldn't have as good.
It's a compound question on that. Have they ever asked you for advice on anything?
Not that's specifically anime related. And that is because most directors are very careful not to cross that line. Not because there's this perception that the director should, that an actor should keep his mouth shut or her mouth shut and the director is the one that calls the shots, but because actors work best when they are being directed, and it is an issue of trust. Sometimes, especially in certain shows where actors have to put themselves in very vulnerable positions to act the part, you have to believe that the director knows the show backwards and forwards and knows everything you want to do and will take you on this journey as a guide, not as a fellow traveler. There are cases where that's not not actually what happens. My own directing style was more like, let's discover this together. But I found if I, as a director, for example, when I directed, if I could sort of wrap myself in the mantle of, here's what we're going to do. It's my job to put the actor at utter ease and trust in what I know of the show. And if they have something to say about, my decision, I will let them speak. But I also feel it's my job to just make them feel as comfortable as possible. It's the way to do that is to make them think that, and it's not to sound cold, but the best way a director can do that, particularly with a franchise like Ava, is to really leave no elbow room for the actor to doubt what he's or she's been given, so that you would think to say, well, I don't know about that. And so it doesn't often happen because the directors are directing because they're good, and that's one of the things that makes them good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Sorry, my voice.
Oh no, the rest of what? I'm just sitting close up. So let's see, who had a question? Let's see, I called on him earlier, so yes, you there.
Is there any time that you're doing the voice of a character that you become a fanatic of the show or the character itself by just getting into the story or into the mind of the character?
You know damn well the answer there. No, thank you. That's a good question. Yes. It happens very often that I will know nothing about a show until I've been called in to audition for it. And then if I happen to get a part and I get in it and I happen to see this awesome show, I'll be like, oh my god, I freaking love this. Case in point, One Piece. How many people here are One Piece fans? Oh, that's awesome, that's awesome. By the way, Klaus Nomi, you rock. Thank you. Just want to give you a shout out there. If you people don't know who Klaus Nomi is, go look it up. We have the internet. Stop being lazy. No, One Piece was a show I knew nothing about. Absolutely nothing about. I mean, there's a lot of anime out there, it's hard to keep track of it, right? Plus, I'm a busy guy, and I got called into this, and I instantly kind of saw the style of the animation, like in the audition sides, which is what actors read from. There's character descriptions and stuff, and I'm like, this is really cool. This is quirky. I kind of like, is it pirates? I like pirates. And then I auditioned for it, and then I got the part of one of the villains, Inaru, in the Skypiea arc, and I thought, oh, this is fun. And then the more I recorded on that show, the more I'm like, I freaking love this. This is so imaginative and so cool. And God, I wish this had been around when I was a kid because I would have eaten this up. And now I am completely obsessed with it. I've watched everything that's been put out. I've gotten quite a bit through the manga. Like it's hard to read as much manga as I should because I'm so busy doing other things like writing. But yeah, that happens a lot. And several shows. I mean, I can name another. Oron was a big example of a show that I knew nothing about until I had the chance to work on it. Like, this is freaking awesome, So it's really cool. And again, so it's like the fanboy in me is constantly getting exposed to new stuff that I wouldn't necessarily find if I weren't in the industry. So it's a nice little feedback loop that has given me so much to chew on that I don't know that I will ever finish, or ever read all the manga I should read, or watch all the anime that I want to watch. It's just freaking awesome, which is great, which means I have to find a way to live forever. Because it's the only way I'm going to outstrip anime and get to everything I want to do. Oh, God, it's so frustrating. But we're living in exciting times. Maybe we will find a mentality drug. I would totally take it. Before anyone else, sign me up. Good question. Thank you. We have another question. You in the front row. We have a microphone.
As a writer, is there any time when you've been working on a script for a show you did or didn't know before you were working on it, that you were reading this and either working on the script, you saw things that you really wanted to bring out in the script because as a fan and you was like, this part is awesome, I need to shape this way. Or were there parts where you didn't like the script and you really had to do like that, the fan, and you didn't like it?
Well, okay, to answer your second question first, I will say that I have been very, very lucky, and I've not yet had to adapt a script that I didn't like. And that's a testament, again, to not necessarily that every show I've worked on has been the most amazing thing in the world, but partly because of my work ethic, and I feel it's my obligation to like what I do, otherwise why am I wasting everyone else's time? And partly because, again, you know, being a fanatic, I will find something to like about everything to get me through it, because if I don't find something to like, even the dorkiest thing, I'm just not using my imagination. If I'm not using my imagination, I damn well shouldn't be writing. So that's what I feel about it. Now, to answer your first question, yes, oftentimes I will see a scene and there'll be just a brief subtext there that doesn't necessarily always come out through a straight translation. Not because it's not there or because, you know, the translation isn't good. One thing I've learned to appreciate in writing is that between the subtle nuances between Japanese and English are so remarkably different that there is no such thing as a one-to-one ratio between everything that's translated. And I'm fascinated by that. Every language has its own culture, its own inheritance, its own sort of vocabulary of imagery and you know, traditions, and many of them don't translate over. But if you kind of can dig a little deeper into a line and find something equivalent, like, this is, I mean, and a perfect example of kind of the surface of that is, say, for example, the idea that a daikon radish, calling someone a daikon radish, which I didn't learn until I worked on Orog, is the equivalent of calling someone a ham actor. And a ham actor, for those of you that don't know, because it's kind of an obscure reference, is just someone who overacts. I eat meat a lot. But it's just a funny way of calling someone a ham, or overcooked ham, you know, someone who's just really laying it on thick. And once I knew that, I was like, that's really cool that kind of category of thought, that the idea that someone can overreact to such a degree that it makes them ridiculous is kind of a category of thought in both languages, but the way it's described is completely different. And so it plays up the interesting differences between the languages, but also just the similarities in which both lines of use either tongue are connected. And there are many times when that gives you so much freedom to say, this is really awesome, I want to bring out this subtext here because I think there's something about the way the English would say this that might, you know, there might be some sacrifice from what's meant in the Japanese, but I can make up for that for certain things the English can do that Japanese can't, and vice versa. And so you always try to find this balance. And it's very difficult sometimes, but it's also very, very rewarding. And I always make sure that any liberties I take with a script, and I have something of a reputation for taking a lot of liberties with straight translations because I want it to sound fluid and as poetic as possible when necessary in English, because I want the people watching it in English to feel the same way that someone who speaks Japanese felt when hearing the equivalent line. And that I don't want someone to disconnect themselves from the English and be judging it based on the Japanese. I don't think that's an appropriate way to weigh the story. Getting back to what I said earlier, I think the source material, the characters, the story, if they are well done by the, you know, if they're served by the original vision of the creator of the series or the manga or whatever, it's a testament to how interesting and hearty and how universal they are that they can support a wide variety of interpretations and still feel interesting and still feel that they belong in that story. And I love that. I love that there's no final word about what makes this work and what doesn't. You just have to kind of go with your gut and think, again, you know, I want them to feel, watching in English, what the person in Japanese felt watching in the original language. And in that respect, both seiyus and scriptwriters in Japanese and the voice actors and the actors in the dub industry here, our first responsibility is to the source material, is to the message or the theme or the tone that was set by the series creator. And beyond that, our responsibility is first and foremost to ourselves and to you all, who we take for granted as being an audience that is sensitive to what we're trying to do. Sometimes you're not lucky enough to reach that audience, and people get really angry because they're like, no, in the Japanese this means this, and they might be very, very right, but you're like, no, we're not destroying the Japanese. For God's sake, you can go back and watch it. But you should be able to go and watch the Japanese if you speak Japanese, and you should be able to watch the English and get something a little similar out of both of them, but also very different. Again, it's like watching the same thing again, but seeing it in a different context, puts it in a totally different light, and that's what I feel I should do. I never ever want to write something that just sounds the same or is straight the same. I want to take chances with it in the same way that a creator took chances. and made it. Does that make sense? And sometimes it's very difficult to do, and sometimes I fall flat on my face, but you have to take the risk. You have to take the risk, or it just doesn't matter. And that brings me to my point earlier when I said about being lucky and not having to work on a show that I didn't like, and that it's because I just find something to like about everything. Speaking to fanatics and fanaticism and obsessions in general, one thing I've learned by being a fanatic, and I love this phrase, I don't know where I picked it up, but there is a difference. People will tell you, follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion. BS. Don't. Because your passion is ephemeral. It's not entirely you. It is very important to know what your passions are and to honor them. But there's a difference between following your passion and being creative enough to bring your passion with you so that whatever you find yourself doing, you can be good at. Because ultimately, that's the power of our responsibility as imaginative beings to make something we like or want, or that will kind of usher us across this threshold to be adults and to have a more complex view of the world. It's our responsibility to think our way through that. And so we should never indulge the side of ourselves that resists change, if that's the reason we're doing it for. We just don't want newness because it's new and I'm scared of it. You should precisely do it because you're frightened. And so every time I sit down to write a script or voice a character, I'm frightened, of course, and that's how I know I'm doing something right, because the inner fanboy is going, don't screw this up, don't screw this up, don't screw this up. But the part of me that constantly fights with the fanboy, and for that reason it's actually the fanboy's best friend, is saying, who cares about screwing it up? Just do it justice. Find your own way into it and be true to that vision, and the fanboy inside of you will be like, okay, good job. And I try to appease the fanboy in me that I screw up, because I'm so worried about what I'm doing and how other people will see it that I can't find my way into the character or the script that I'm writing. And if I can't find my way into it, how the hell could I expect any of you to? You know, and it's not fair. It's not fair for me to not put the work into something that if I expect you to give me the same as an audience. So, wow, I really am getting dramatic. Someone asked a stupid question, for God's sakes. Let's lighten this up. You there, sir. Here we go.
This is a really on point as well. What particularly about Cowboy Bebop do you like?
Oh,
I had
man.
one.
That's a crazy good question, though, but it's really hard. You know what I love about Cowboy Bebop is that it's just fearless. I mean, the stuff they do in that show is so amazing. The main character is two things at once. He's utterly unsympathetic until towards the end. You're fascinated by him. And that, it's something I hear people say all the time is that, well, I just can't get into it because I don't like the character. I don't hear people say that about Bebop necessarily, but I hear them say it about other things anyway. They're like, I just don't like the character. Well, I don't have to like a character to be fascinated and want to watch what happens to them or what they go through. And Spike is a great example of that kind of anti-hero who I'm like, God, I don't know how I feel about Spike. And that keeps me watching because my head just goes, no, you can't turn your back on this. You have to keep watching this because I have to know what makes him tick. I have to know, I can't say whether I like him or dislike him. And of course, by the end of the series, you grow with him, and it's really amazing. And that's just one aspect I can say about Cowboy Bebop. I love the visual style. There's all the minutiae, all the details. There's so much creativity in that show and that vision of the future. It's kind of broken down future. It's very much like our present. Technology's cooler, but it still screws up all the time. I love that. I love that idea. It's very ragtag, hardscrabble. It's very bohemian in a way, and I'm very much a bohemian. I very much sort of fly by the seat of my pants and just kind of go where the wind takes me. That's how I found my way into this business, by the way. And I love that show. It's just like the perfect expression of that philosophy to me. And I think it's a philosophy of life most people find very attractive, and sadly few people ever find attractive enough to actually want to follow because it is very scary. But that's why, in a nutshell, that's what I find so awesome about Bebop. Wow, I love talking about Bebop. I'm going to have to do a video one time. Like the red letter day for me was getting to meet Steve Bloom, who voiced him. And he turned out to be just as cool and as badass as I wanted him to be. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Because he is. He is the coolest, sweetest guy you'll ever meet. And he was a little freaked out by how big of a fan I was. And I was like, you don't understand. Like 10 years ago, I watched this where I had any aspirations to being a voice actor. And now I'm a voice actor. And we're kind of colleagues and holy crap. And he's like, wow, you're so sweet. I'm like, no, I'm really creepy fanboy. I'm sorry, some other hands were going up there. Who's got a question? Let's see. Someone have a question. You there in the, yes, you, madam. Yes.
Oh, that. As a fan, is that?
Yeah, it's on. I can hear you.
Okay. As a fanboy, did you ever get a part you were excited about, oh, I know where I'm going with this, and then you came into it as a pro, as the actor, that brought out things in you that were totally